Hey, thanks for joining us today as we continue through this Holy Week celebration. The passage that we're going to be looking at today is found in John chapter 13. You know, this passage has always amazed me. Jesus knows the hour is coming for him to lay down his life for the sins of the world. And yet, in this passage, we see that Jesus begins to visibly demonstrate for them what laying down one's life looks like. So today we're going to look at a couple of aspects from this and what it means to lay down your life. And the first thing that I want you to see from this passage is that in order to lay down one's life, you must first lose your dignity. John chapter 13, verse 1 through 4 says this: Before the Passover festival, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Now, when it was time for supper, the devil had already put into the heart of Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, to betray him. Jesus knew that the Father had given everything into his hands, that he had come from God, and that he was going back to God. So he got up from supper, laid aside his outer clothing, took a towel, and tied it around himself. And we see that right from the beginning that Jesus, as he approached his disciples, right before this last dinner with them, he chose to take on the duties of what a servant or a slave would do. He laid aside his outer garment, and he began to wash his disciples' feet. The second thing that I want you to see here is that Jesus served those who didn't even understand his purpose. How often is it hard how often do we get frustrated with those around us as we try to explain to them the beauty of the gospel message, and it's just like they don't get it. But yet we see in this passage, we see that even Jesus' own disciples didn't understand, but yet Jesus served them. Jesus served those who didn't even understand his purpose. John 13, 6-9 shows us this account. It said, he came to Simon Peter, who asked him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus answered him, what I'm doing for you now, you don't even realize, but afterward you will understand. You will never wash my feet, Peter said. Jesus replied, if I don't wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. And we see that here Peter had no idea truly what Jesus was symbolizing and what Jesus was doing. And he was showing him and foreshadowing what was going to take place in the next few hours. The next thing that I want you to see from this passage, that Jesus, even though he was about to die, took the time to serve those who would despise him. We see this in John chapter 13, verse 11. It says, for he knew who would betray him. This is why he said, not all of you are clean. And of course we know that it's speaking of Judas. And what Judas was about to do was about to leave this supper and get up and go betray the Son of Man. Yet Jesus stooped down and washed even Judas's feet. You know, and in this example we see that Jesus was not just washing their feet. He was foreshadowing what was to take place. The sacrifice that would come in just yet a few hours. Jesus would be stripped. He would take on the death that was meant for criminals. But instead of just washing his disciples' feet, he would wash the sins of the world with his blood. And in this, we find the hope of Holy Week. We find the message of Jesus Christ, that in this, he not only showed us how to serve, but he showed us what service looks like. And Jesus Christ, he laid down his life for those who would come to him, that the whole world might be washed in his blood. If you're with us today and maybe you haven't done that, maybe you haven't given your life to Christ, I implore you, maybe this Holy Week, as we celebrate Easter, celebrate this Resurrection Day, maybe this week would be your time for you to turn to Christ.